Fucking hell. Okay. Let's try again. So, let's just take like 4 or 5 of trying to do this. I realised the camera only records in chunks because I'm using my digital mirrorless SLR camera. Not SLR, mirrorless, whatever, camera. And our regular recording thing for the pod. Camera fucked up once. The recorder fucked up another time. Then I didn't realise the camera only records in like 10-15 minute chunks for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, everything seems to be recording now. Yeah, it does. So, I'm going to chunk this in 10-minute chunks because I can track it on this now, which is good. And hopefully it'll work fine. This is my office where I do my day job. And so something a bit different for our 10 to 12 regular listeners. Thank you to all of you. Debrief of the women's only self-defense seminar that I ran a while ago. Take a million of me trying to do this. So lots of our male students have been asking me kind of what I taught and stuff like that. And so I think it's self-defense, personal protection, all that stuff, whatever you want to call it, I think is intrinsically interesting to all of us as a concept. And if anyone ever says they haven't thought about what they would do if someone attacked them, let's say, it's probably spouting shit, because I think that's an evolutionary trait in all of us to be concerned about personal safety. I think it's inbuilt, and it's a bit of a dark art if you like. Don't know anyone who trains, or you don't know what to train, where to start, but it's important. And in this country, we don't have, like, you can't carry guns or anything like that, so it's not like, oh, I'll just carry my gun, like, so it's a big deal. So I thought I'd just do a bit of a solo pod discussing what I taught, some of the reasoning behind it, what I learnt from it. I've had some positive feedback, some constructive feedback, which has been really useful. So, and met some really interesting women as well, which will definitely inform my coaching and development going forwards. I'd like to do these on a regular basis and continue to do them for free, like direct to user for free kind of thing. I think this has a place in like kind of corporate, or like going into businesses and teaching it to people as kind of like a enrichment or a wellness thing for staff, which you could charge for, but I don't kind of believe in charging people for the basics of personal safety. So I'd like to continue running them. People said they'd be happy to pay, but I don't know. So I'm just going to run through what I did for those that are interested, basically. Yeah. So if I look this way, it's because I'm looking at my screen, which has got my lesson plan and all my notes and stuff on. And because looking directly into an inanimate object camera makes me feel a little bit awkward. So yeah, from the get-go, I just wanted people to feel comfortable, very welcomed, and like on a good kind of footing to begin with, because I think it's quite scary for people going to stuff like that. So I had my wife Catherine there and our Newbury BJJ girls that could come, the women that could come. So and they were all super lovely, welcoming to everybody, which is great. Obviously they were, and obviously exits, toilets, all that stuff. Go everyone on the mats, and I basically introduced myself and went into a little bit about my personal journey into martial arts, the reason I got into martial arts, and my stammer, and using it as a tool for managing the fear I felt in everyday situations when other people wouldn't necessarily, and the power of like adrenaline control and all that stuff that I got as a really positive byproduct of training martial arts. And I thought, because people are turning up and being vulnerable by being there, it would be like you should give some of that back too. And I got really positive feedback from that at the end. People said they really appreciated the fact that I did that, and so that was really nice to hear. Because it is scary going somewhere, and you want, if people are putting themselves on a limb to come to me to do this stuff, I think I should go out on a bit of a limb back. So just in a mutual respect kind of way. So that was nice. And yeah, just gave myself some history, gave Maya and Lou, my kind of two official kind of assistant coaches. They introduced themselves and the reason they started training, what they've got out of training martial arts, and the benefits and stuff like that. So that was really nice. And then the first chunk, which took longer than I would have liked it to, I think, because I'm so well practiced at like teaching like jiu-jitsu and sport and coaching that stuff, that I can bash that out in a very streamlined way. Whereas the discussion at the start, I didn't feel was quite as clean, and took slightly longer than it should have done. We also started late because I wanted to make sure people were good and set up and comfortable first. So that's another lesson to me in terms of probably asking people to turn up early so we can start on time. So I went into discussing what do we mean by self-defense. You can call it any number of things like personal safety, personal protection, self-defense. It's easy to think of it like, the analogy I used was, if someone says, think about swimming in the sea in Australia or South Africa, what do you think of? And obviously, I suspect anyone watching this probably thinks of getting eaten by sharks. When, yes, that is probably the scariest and most catastrophic, traumatic thing that could happen to you swimming in the sea in South Africa or Australia. But is so unlikely compared to getting caught in a riptide and drowning. Both of those things could kill you, but the riptide is more banal and like less immediately scary, but is just as dangerous. So, and the reason for saying that is like, we all think of like self-defense of like the stranger attack, like someone jumping out on you in like the bushes or an underpass to, and that's not like, that can happen and does happen, but statistically is far less likely to happen than us, especially women and girls suffering violence of any kind. The likelihood is it's going to be someone you already know, be that a family member, a partner, an acquaintance at a party, like that kind of thing. So, and that's really different. Jiu-jitsu and grappling as a foundation for self-defense is so brilliant because it's scalable, transferable, and it gives you tools for physically managing a situation, compared to striking, where if all you've got is a hammer, everything is just the nail, right? Whereas jiu-jitsu, I can build posture and structure to get myself out of being sat down on a chair when I want to be over by the door. That jiu-jitsu gives me tools to do that, which is huge. So we can operate in those grey areas, and like just down to an elderly relative with dementia gets confused and combative, and or someone's diabetic and they're having a hypo and they're very tense and combative and start to lash out. Like, you don't want to, if all you know is how to punch someone in the face, like, whereas jiu-jitsu, you can physically control someone and control your own stuff. Like, that's powerful for protecting ourselves and those around us. That's why a lot of us really love it, and that's why I think it's such a powerful tool for self-defense. And then we went into discussing the difference between social aggression and asocial violence, which are the two main types of violence we could experience, I suppose. Social aggression being anything that has some reasoning behind it, or is some kind of negotiation, even if that's like a negotiation of status on a night out, like drunk guys trying to be the big man, or even down to someone wants to mug you, take your keys and your wallet, like all of that stuff, even down to like undue attention, or someone's too close to you at a party. Like, this is all very social pack dynamics aggression, which is like leaning to violence and can lead to proper physical violence. The other type is asocial violence, being this person wants to harm me, damage me, and there's no negotiation to be had. This is that stranger attack in the middle of the night when you're trying to go home, or someone's having a severe mental health crisis and the lights are on and no one's home. Drug fueled violence, like this kind of stuff, which is like, that's the shark attack. Less likely, but traumatically, catastrophically dangerous. There's not much sliding scale compared to social aggression. The tools we have will still help us in both of those situations, but the majority of situations will be social aggression, and this grappling approach is very applicable to social aggression. Training for asocial violence is a bit different, and I think you need the foundations of desensitization to physical contact in order to benefit from training for like violence. And the main point of the workshop was desensitizing people to physical contact, because if you've never experienced like any kind of rough and tumble, and then suddenly you're in a physically violent altercation, that's like jumping in the sea when you have never had a swimming lesson, right? Whereas for some of us who have trained for such a long time, it's almost too normal being in physical kind of contact with another person, and it's a skill set. I discussed that there's no martial art you can train like specifically, like do this particular martial art for self-defense. It's how you train it, how you contextualize it, how you think about it, how you condition your mind and your body into being prepared. We discussed the idea of scales of safety, being that you can stack pebbles or little safety weights onto one side of the scales, and the hope being to counterbalance whatever big and unpredictable trauma happens on the other side of the scales. You don't know how big that's going to be, you don't know if and when it's going to drop onto that other side of the scales, but the more little pebbles you can stack onto the safety side, the better, and doing a workshop like that is a really good pebble on the side of safety. I discussed like, in terms of what do we mean by self-defense, personal protection, personal safety, like it's just avoiding injury, either you injuring yourself. That's why we do manual handling training, that's why we like learn to drive and take driving tests and stuff, or other people injuring us. Just avoiding injury. I said the best skill set if you want to be safe within your life and existence is first aid. Because you don't know when something bad's going to happen, but to avoid being irreversibly injured and sustaining either your life or someone else's life, first aid. That's why we do manual handling. That's why like soft skills, negotiation, driving. Can you swim? Can you run? numeracy, literacy. If you don't have those two things, you're more likely to live in poverty because of the lack of job opportunities to you. That it puts you in a vulnerable and or dangerous chronic situation. So it's all scalable. Reading a map is another skill that keeps you safe. You wouldn't go into the mountains if you didn't know how to read a map or navigate that. The difference of this all being that you can choose not to go into the mountains. You can choose not to go into the ocean if you can't swim. You can't always choose someone else's behaviour and actions towards you. And that's why it's a bit of a scary prospect. We discussed briefly internal alarms and red flags and stuff like that, and adrenaline. So I didn't go too deep into this because people had signed up for like a physical self-defense kind of workshop class under Newbury Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it's kind of a sports and or grappling technique based thing, which is difficult because the majority of like defensive skills are non-physical, and so we could do a whole day on all the rest of that stuff, like situational awareness, adrenaline, how to manage fear, how to control your breathing, like all that stuff, which we did a little bit of, but I didn't want to go too heavily into that. If there's demand for it, I'd be happy to do it. I think it's important, but it was not appropriate under what had been advertised for this particular workshop, so I was trying to like not go too deep into it. But what we did cover was like knowing, like, I don't need to explain to women what an internal alarm feels like and what a red flag looks like. Like, I don't want to patronise anyone or kind of pretend like women don't have to be acutely conscious of those things all day, every day. But what I was trying to get across with the workshop was, how do we take those internal feelings, alarms and instincts and externalize those into action? And the desensitization of that day was to instigate fight or flight and to avoid freeze or flop, being the other two of those fight, flight, freeze, flop. They have their place. Like if you have to play dead because you're getting attacked by a bear in an evolutionary sense, like freeze and flop, play dead, great. But in this context, we need fight or flight. And in order to do that, we need to be desensitized to physical contact enough to make choices and not have choices made for us. So I then touched upon, in fact, we're going to cut and come back. I'm really screwing this up with the external recorder and the camera, and the fact that the camera chunks it, so I have to keep stopping. Anyway, so this starty talky bit was too long, and I need to condense it, definitely. That's a real point that I learned from it. Some of it was in the feedback that I got, and I already knew it was too long. I'm just not as used to doing that style of like teaching and instructing and discussing, so I'm not as good at steering it, streamlining it, but it's important as a backbone to the stuff we then went on to do. The next bit was self-defense and the law. What is self-defense as considered by the law? So common law is like self-defense, literally. If you have an honest held belief that you or another are in imminent danger, you may use such force as is reasonable and necessary to avert that danger, aka literal self-defense or defense of another. Also Section 3 Criminal Law Act, which is like if someone's doing crime, like you can use reasonable force to stop them doing crime. So doing bad things to another person, criminal damage, burglary, stuff like that. And the fact that we think of the law as being there to tell us what we can't do, which is true, but it's also there to define what we can do in any given situation, to allow reasonable people to do reasonable things, even if those reasonable things appear quite extreme, and be legally protected in doing so. We then went into Clare's law, which is within the 2021 Domestic Abuse Act as legislation, but was policy from much earlier, 2014. Clare's law was named after a woman whose partner murdered her, and he had a long history of violence and domestic violence offences. Her parents believed, had she known that, she would not have been in a relationship with him. And it consists of two parts, basically the legal right to ask and the legal right to actually be told or to know. What Clare's law is the legal obligation for the police to do something if you flag up either your own relationship, a relationship of a family member, a neighbour, a friend, someone you're close to. If you believe their partner is violent or may have a history of domestic violence or harassment style offences, you can go to the website, Thames Valley website, any police force's website, to report that. The police then have a legal obligation to look into it. And if there's appropriate criminal history, so domestically violent offences or harassment, anything in that kind of area that's appropriate, they will disclose that to, under their discretion, they'll disclose that to the most appropriate person. Normally it's the person in the relationship, but if it's someone under 18 or a vulnerable adult of some kind, then it may be a parent or guardian or someone who's best placed to protect that person. Lots of people don't know that exists, but it's a really powerful tool, arguably just as powerful or even more powerful than physical, like, protection skills, let's say. We then touched upon positive action policy with regards to domestic violence. I think all police forces in the UK have this, certainly Thames Valley do, where if there's grounds to suspect an offence has been committed, they will arrest the person. So they won't always arrest a person if it's like criminal damage or something and it's not in their interests, but with the domestic violence, they will arrest them, remove them from the address, and which provides the victim a period of time, should they choose, require, agree to some intervention. That's the most dangerous time, is when someone's trying to exit their situation. That's the most dangerous time for that person. So if the offender is arrested, they are removed, and the victim knows that. So it's just a powerful tool to have, and the police can keep them for up to 24 hours, and even if they're released under investigation, they're probably under bail conditions. We then discussed bail conditions being something along the lines of, you can't go to this address or contact this person for X amount of time. If they do those things, that's not a separate offence per se, but it is related to the original offence, and they can be re-arrested for it. So again, another powerful tool and vocabulary for people to have when discussing it with or reporting things to the police. So and so is under bail and he's, currently breaching bail by contacting me and being at the address. They'll come out and they'll do something about it. So there's a lot of negative rhetoric around the police, but you've got to at least speak the language. I think that's another powerful tool to have that people don't necessarily understand. So lots of spiel at the start, but there's so much to it, and I just wanted to kind of caveat everything we were about to do with all of that other stuff, because we can't just go to a self-defense class, learn how to break a grip and do an upar escape and think I'm now prepared and tooled up for anything. Like, that's not how it works. And so much of it is social and behavioural and self situation management that I would feel really remiss just saying to people, oh, you can do a mount escape now, you're good, because that's just not the way violence works. And I think those are some of the more powerful tools that aren't physical that I think people need to know about. So if anyone's got any suggestions about other things people should know, or if anyone out there thinks that's a load of shit, it's just interesting to discuss. Everyone finds this interesting. So then eventually we moved on to physical stuff. So like the whole workshop was based around desensitizing people to physical contact, amongst other like specific techniques and stuff. But you don't want to be thrown into some physical situation when you're not desensitized to it, because that's how your adrenaline overtakes you and you get freeze or flop rather than fight or flight, and you stop being able to make choices and dealing with adrenaline and stuff. So desensitization was big. So we started out with people just shaking hands with everybody, mixing up, shaking hands, getting to partners, giving them a hug from the side, hug from the front, getting people to tap, to learn and respect what the tap is. Again, it was a very mutual trust thing of like, if someone taps in here, that means stop. No matter what, if we're just discussing something and you want that discussion to stop, you can say tap, no. Because you don't know, someone might need to go to the toilet desperately or whatever. So respecting the tap was a big thing, and we learned that by doing it. We touched a little bit upon body language, tone being way more important or way more impacting than the actual words you use. We could have spent all day again on like non-verbal, situational awareness. That's so big, but I didn't want to spend too long on it because that's not why people were there. So we discussed the alarms, externalizing alarms, how to do that, how to create space, and then we got really into the kind of bulk of the physical techniques. I think people were probably surprised by how much non-physical stuff there was, but when violence and precursors to violence are like 80% at least non-verbal and non-physical, it's hard to try and just teach people the physical without all of that caveated at the start. So physical, we did handshakes and hugs to desensitize each other, and then we went into basics of footwork. So boxing footwork, wrestling, grappling footwork, like similar principles of have your feet at least shoulder width apart. We don't want our feet too close together or crossing over, because this is like weak base. As much as we can, we want to maximize our time in strong base. No matter what we're doing, where we are, base is important. And we did stepping exercises where you just step in the direction of your lead foot. If you've ever come to any of my kind of wrestling no-gi classes, we do this. This is the warm-up where we do footwork, and then we do duck unders and whatever else is. We do wrestler shots and all that stuff on the end of it, but it all starts from good, strong footwork. And then they had to do it with a partner. So one person was basically leading the dance, another one was trying to mirror the other person. So if the lead person stepped left, you'd have to step left as well. Or if they stepped right, you'd have to step right in a reactionary drill, backwards, forwards, all that stuff. We also then did that footwork, but wrestling off a wall. like chest to chest, just basically using footwork to steer round another person, and the whole kind of concept of aiming for the gaps, not focusing on the obstacle. So we did that. Then grips, breaking and weaving grips. So we did same side grip breaks in terms of counter pressuring, snapping your grip back using the skinny blade of the arm, because the grip being a closed C, not an O. And if it's a closed C, there's the weak point here. I don't know if you'll be able to see that on camera. And then have people drilling that and like giving each other slightly more resistance. And then cross side grip we did to be weaving in and out of that cross side grip. Had people drawing circles with their hands, and then getting on the outside and pushing the other person away. And it was a case of not being too specific with the techniques, but it's just a case of, because I do this in jiu-jitsu all the time, I'm like, if I trying to break a grip and I circle this way and I'm like, oh, that didn't work, you can just circle the other way, like, that's fine. So do keep circling till something starts to work. You've only got two directions to choose from. And that whole thing of ideally being on the outside. Then we went into 2-on-1 grips. The police teach this as like an escort grip, it's called. But in grappling, it's just 2-on-1. It's just any form of 2-on-1. Russian tie, you name it. There's the inside one, like the wrestler on the inside, and then there's Russian tie on the outside, which is just like a stronger version of the police escort position, which is where you're on the wrist and behind the elbow. And again, going into the scalability of that, of like escort, you can be escorting old, I don't know, Mr. Derek in the care home, who's got dementia and is confused in the middle of the night, and you're just gently escorting him back to bed, all the way through to drunken so-and-so on a night out. We're steering them out of a location, going from inside to outside. You're on the arm slightly behind. You can feel when they start to resist with that 2-on-1, and you can apply pressure to it. So, or someone's attacked you with a knife, let's say, and you've steered to the outside, and you're applying body weight to an elbow in order to break it. Like, scalability of that outside 2-on-1 is quite a big deal. And if someone's big and strong and you're stuck to them on that 2-on-1, they pull it, you go with it. So when I teach arm drags, it's like, are you the planet or are you a moon? You can be either. If you're bigger than them, you can use an arm drag to steer them. If they're bigger than you, get that arm drag grip. They're probably going to retract it. Let them make you orbit them. Like, it's that kind of thing. So we drilled that and get like 2-on-1, trying to go in and out of 2-on-1 grips. Again, just scaling up the desensitization. We then put a verbal game on the end of it, because I think it's really important, and something I learned in the police. They call it your public order voice. I didn't do public order training, but that whole like, sometimes you'll see it's a bit cringe, but it's important. Unlike these like self-defense things where they're like, get back, like that. And actually the practice of using your outside big boy voice, without wishing to like gender it, but like being able to like project your voice is massive. Someone dropped we just got back from Italy, and we were in the airport going to the, we landed, and someone had dropped a pair of glasses, and someone had picked them up. I was like, anyone dropped a pair of glasses? So Catherine, my wife, who works for the ambulance service, just said, like, she properly belted her voice out, and has anyone lost a pair of glasses? Like, really through her voice, because no one could hear the quiet person, sometimes the situation calls for shouting, and someone was like, oh yeah, they're mine, so like problem solved. Again, a tool in the toolbox. So I had people grip break, push off, and tell people to get back and stay back, but then I had them give them an obscure instruction, which I think is quite a powerful exercise, because you're in adrenaline, sympathetic nervous system of like pushing off, get back, stay back, but then you have to bring it back down to like problem solving. And so I was like, well, then give them a command of like, stand on one leg, rub your tummy and pat your head, like make them do something stupid, because that brings everything back down to baseline again. So getting used to being in and out of pushy shouty mode back down to baseline, which people had a good time with. There was lots of laughter and stuff, which I took as a really good indicator. So that was really nice. And then we had a quick recap, debrief, and a break, basically. It's easier to talk through. I'm kind of bashing out all the physical stuff. The non-physical stuff just takes a longer time because it's all discussion based. Whereas this I can just talk through, bash out really easily. So that was the starting, and then we got on to like the more jiu-jitsu based stuff. So again, in the objective of the like lesson objective of how do we just avoid injury, we had like break falling backwards, protecting your head when you break fall by tucking it in, curved spine, all that stuff. Technical stand up is a big one, for not turning your back and protecting the computer. Let's say when you're going from down to up, the amount of time you see a video on the internet of some drunken fight and it's when someone's standing up that they get like a soccer kicked in the head. To avoid that risk of injury, standing up the right way is such a big deal. So we did that. So I was kind of pressed for time towards the end, so I had to like let some things slide. I was going to do some butt scooching. I know all the people, like in jiu-jitsu, but if you're sat down in the floor and you have to create space in order to stand up, actually a good butt scooch backwards is actually a very good defensive space creation. So we joke about butt scooches being stupid in competition or jiu-jitsu or something, but time and a place, right? So, and then bridging, coming to your knees, and not like a whole shrimp, but a small shrimp, are all the basic foundational movements for all the positional escapes we would then go on and do. So then more into like ground stuff, grappling stuff, I had to scrap for time the kind of topple game where you have someone on all fours and you just try to like topple them over, like to get home that like principle of breaking down the legs of a table or a chair. Like if you take out just the one leg, they've still got stability. Take out two, it's probably gonna topple. So in terms of ground techniques, we did escape from mount in terms of trap and roll, a very basic trap and roll escape, but getting that bridge to expose the arm, to trap the arm. You've got an arm and a leg, which is two chair legs, table legs taken out, and a big bridge over. People doing really well with that. And then in terms of standing up, because you've just toppled them and you're in the guard, then just picking a spot so your posture is good, and then standing up and disengaging. And we also did closed guard technical stand up as well. Again, we're not like teaching people scissor sweeps or submissions. It's just how I'm in this position, how can I escape? So from closed guard, little shrimp to engage my hips, my knees, and gives me mobility to use my feet to push off. With our partners, we were pushing off. Again, I didn't need, when you look at the guard. You don't need to be told the reason or connotations of the position in terms of like self-defense and sexual violence. So, but that little shrimp and getting something in between you and the person, you can then extend out. Obviously, we pushed with our feet against their hips, but in a self-defense proper situation, you're going to be kicking. You're going to be kicking anything you can kick, head, stomach, groin, whatever. It's the point of your kicking off a person, and if you damage them in the process, great. So we were practicing that. Disengage, little shrimp, get something in between you and push off. Technical stand-up. Two very basic but very important drills. Again, I didn't quite have time to do any, so I was umming and ahhing about pressure testing stuff as to whether it was appropriate or suitable. I think because I'd intentionally had people stay with the same partner for the whole workshop, because I wanted people to feel safe and secure and to build trust, and the whole point was desensitizing us to physical contact and trying to remove the ick factor of so much of it, like speaking up, like projecting your voice, like grabbing another person. There's a lot of there's an ick factor attached to it that people have to power through, and you don't want that to be in a dire situation. You want to have done that, removing the ick factor work already. Whereas now, and certainly the very short time I was in the police taught me was I'm so comfortable being hands-on with another person compared to other people who aren't. And that's just interesting. We then did a little exercise, which I'm not going to talk about. We had a discussion and did an exercise surrounding the rear naked choke. There's some stuff I haven't spoken about because I'd like to keep it within the kind of privacy of the workshop, and it's powerful when you don't know what it is. So, but we discussed the mindset of what is the mindset and how we're conditioned into having things done to us, or I'm the victim, and how to not have that kind of a mindset anymore. And then we just had a bit of a discussion and a debrief at the end. And I sent out people if they could give me their email addresses if they were happy to give feedback, or done a reading list of all the books and the research I've done in terms of the context and content of the workshop. We had a bit of a discussion at the end, and everyone was really nice, and that was it. So yeah, I just checked this is still on. Is still on. Just. So I learnt a lot. I was really nervous. I tried not to appear too nervous because obviously everyone else turning up was probably really nervous too. And I'm supposed to not be nervous, but I was really nervous because I want to do a good job. And I got some really good feedback, got some good constructive feedback, and people shared some of their own personal experiences, which I really appreciated because it really feeds what goes into the content and how I would like to develop it. And the spiel, the talky bit needs to be more streamlined. I know that. There's so much of it, so I wonder I could split it. If I was to deliver it to a company or corporate, I think I'd probably if I did a whole day, I'd split it. I'd do the first half of the day discussion based, and then the second half of the day just physical. You could easily split it into 2-3 hour chunks because there's so much to discuss. So I need to really dial in what is absolutely necessary in that start bit, which then gives me more time to do what I want with the physical stuff later. I feel like I got away with it because I can deliver the physical stuff in a very streamlined manner, but it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. But in general, I think it was a success. I think everyone had a good time. No one stopped. No one didn't do the whole thing. One person did stop towards the end, but I was told that it was not something I had done or the lessons. It was a kind of personal thing, and but she still stuck around and she watched and everything. So that was really, really good. And everyone was very supportive, and both of each other and of me, which was really nice. So yeah, and the bits I wanted to really landed. So I'll continue to develop it, and I'd like to run some more. If anyone's got feedback on that, like content that I've just discussed, or if you've spoken to anyone, or if you have anyone who would be interested on speaking to me or has personal experience, I like it's so interesting to me, and I would really love to continue teaching it and developing it into something a bit more substantial. So I'm going to stop talking now because this is going to take a while to cut together. Fuck knows if I've recorded it right on this and that or the other. We'll soon find out. I don't know when this is going out either. So I'm going to stop talking now. Bye for now.